Hey everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch BookTube, and today's going to be a little different. Today we're going to be talking about something that I mentioned in passing in a couple of videos ago, as well as shared in the Witches Book Coven forum thread. Before I get into all of that, a couple of you have asked on several occasions what the lipsticks are that I've used on various different videos, and I love the question because I love lipstick and I love color, and so I swear to you, this will never become a makeup review channel. It won't. But I will share with you what lipstick I'm wearing because I love it. I got this lipstick in passing. I went to the pharmacy up here in town to get tape of all things, and I walked by the CoverGirl section and I just like the color. It's CoverGirl. It's nothing fancy schmancy. It's CoverGirl. There's no name. It's number 425. It's orange. It's silky. It's moisturizing. I love liquid lip, but it can get really dry and really kind of cakey, and this just feels really good and feels kind of like, I don't know, cold weather, drink some hot cocoa kind of vibe on my lip. So there it is. I will share with you in the future what else I'm wearing, but I won't be reviewing anything, I promise. Okay, let's move on to this video. I don't actually have the title of this video solidified in my head yet. But basically, we're going to be talking about a ritual that I have been engaging in for the last 25 years of my life. And it's the ritual of very intentionally picking specific books, or very intentionally allowing specific books to choose me to go on my altar, and why. So let's get into that. I mentioned something about this, I think it was a few videos ago, when I did the review for Ancestral Medicine by Dr. Daniel Four. I'll link to that video somewhere below because if you're interested in ancestral work, that is the book to get. But I've been doing this forever, and in the very, very beginning, I've always loved books. I've always been a voracious reader. I think I probably got that from my father and a cousin of mine who was also a pretty voracious reader. And I just always loved books, but when I really started to dive into my spirituality and keeping altars and working with objects as a channel for wisdom, which is something that I should probably share and write about at some point somewhere on the blog, or I don't know, it's something to definitely go into. I was always reading, and I was reading very specifically about spirituality. I was reading very specifically about psychology. There were things that I was just in a really fertile time of my life, and I'm still there, even though I took like a break somewhere in the middle of all that to not read as much. But in any case, there were books that I would read where I felt like that was seriously over my head. I don't even know what I just read, but I know it touched something psychologically or spiritually in me that started to shake things up, even though I didn't know how. And that's still an experience that I have today where I'll read something and I can feel the foundation of everything that I exist on just shake. I don't have a conscious understanding of how or why, but I know that it's happening. When that happens in a book, that's an indicator for me that the work here is not done. Even though I finished reading it, even though I went from beginning to end and it's closed now, we're still in dialogue. So at that point in my life, I understood that on some level, and I would leave these specific books that affected me in a specific way on my altar, because for me it was like, I'm still not done. You're not done with me. I'm not done with you. And I want more. I want to continue that stream that I felt when I was reading the book, that stream of download, that spiritual download that we get. At this point in my life, I have a deeper understanding of what that's about. This has been covered slightly in one or two of the deep dives for the Witches Box, where we're covering servitors. A servitor is creating a specific thought form that has specific powers in the world to do magical bidding for you. Okay, that's kind of the simplest definition for now. I have come to understand that books are exactly the same thing. That when you create a book, when you as an author create a book, you are creating a complete thought form on many complex levels, touching on many, many, many different aspects of a thing that you're talking about. You pour everything into it, and then you put it out into the world, and people, every time they read it, they continue to reinforce the energetic thought form of that book, empowering that book to affect change in the world. And for me, that amounts to an entity. Each book is its own entity that has wisdom and experience and transformation to impart on each of us who engages in that book in that way. That is what I understand it to be now. That doesn't mean that every single book that you read has to necessarily be that deep of a relationship. I think that it can be, and I think that we as empowered witches can invite a deeper relationship with the book, or say, no, I'm just here for the fun read and then I'm done, we're moving on. it can be whatever you need it to be. But for me, it's been this way instinctually from the very, very beginning when I started to tune into books as the repository for my deepening witchcraft. That's a lot of words. I know. Woo, I think about this a lot, can you tell? I think about this a lot, but I also experience it a lot, and I've experienced this very deeply. It is one of the aspects of my witchcraft that has been super effortless and instinctual and intuitive. Like there was never a period in my life where I questioned this wisdom and this truth. It was just there. It's always been there. So for me, there are books that I engage in to read. I'm reading all the time. And for me, I'm hanging out with you. I'm hanging out with you, the book, for this time in an exchange. And so that exchange for me looks like I'm reading something I agree with or disagree with something. I write notes, I underline, sometimes a whole paragraph that inspires me will bring in like a whole notebook of like ideas for something else, for something different. But it activates me. Books activate us and activate parts of our brain and our soul. I know now that it activates parts of our ancestral lineage when we bring in a new stream of wisdom into the lineage. There is so much to the sacred relationship with books. And it's not just books on witchcraft or spirituality. I have had relationships with books like this that were on psychology, that were on social work and community organization. I've had relationships with books like this that were on science, that were fiction. Oh my God, fiction. We are yet to cover fiction in our reviews, but yes, absolutely. Memoirs. And this is just me. I'm not even going to put this out there on all of you, but because I am a foodie, there have been books on food that have been transportive for me that way as well. So I think that this is a layer of spirituality with how we read that is available to all of us. And it has certainly been an integral part of my life for the last 2.5 decades and will continue forever. I've said a lot of things, but let me back up and give this conversation some structure. I'm going to share what books I have on my altar with you now, except for one, but I'll tell you why not that one. There are different things that will inspire me to put a book on my altar in this way. So the first book I'm going to share is a book that I've reviewed here. It's the book that you're going to be the most familiar with in terms of just the recent past and our recent conversations. And it's actually where I mentioned doing this ritual. It's the Ancestral Medicine book. First of all, this book, while reading it, activated an entire wave of ancestors that just kind of went whoosh and showed up. And they're like, we've been waiting and we're here. So this book activated a new doorway for me and my ancestral work. It activated some healing because even though intellectually I have come to a place where I understand that you can set boundaries with your ancestral line, that you do not have to work with everyone in your ancestral line. Intellectually, I knew that, but it activated that part of me that was still wounded around that. So it brought up a lot of healing for me around that and a lot of trust around that and going deeper into the work that I do with my ancestral line without the level of defense that I had. This is just my personal shit. We all have personal shit around our ancestors. Anyway, when I read this book, it activated a lot. This book also has come with probably the most comprehensive writing in terms of how to engage, how to heal, how to work, how to incorporate ancestral work into your life in a really powerful way. This book is excellent. Excellent, excellent. So when I finished reading it and I did the review and I told you all about how amazing it is, you need to get the book, I wasn't done. I am not done with this book. This book represents for me a new open door that I want to continue to explore. But it also represents for me the fact that I want to keep the download from this book open so that that wisdom continues to integrate into my knowing and my understanding of how to work with my ancestors. Does that make sense? So I'm still with it. I'm still in it because it activated like almost probably more than two very specific tracks for me. It activated a new layer of exploration with my ancestors, but it also activated the desire to really get much more knowledgeable and wise about what ancestral work really is. So this sits on my altar. This may mean that I reread the book again or not, but the book is there and we are still in dialogue. Yeah, like that. Here's what's interesting about this process. So this book, and I don't understand how, I don't understand all the reasons why, but it activated another book. I saw this link happen and it didn't quite make sense to me, but it was like I put the book on my altar, right? My altar is right there and then the shelves are here, right? So I don't know how to do that in a way on the camera that makes sense, but that book almost like there was like this little shot of light that linked to this other book with this like very palpable sensation for me that both books need to be on the altar together at the same time. And that book is a book that I read almost at least 20 years ago. That this is a book that sat on my altar 20 years ago for a very, like, years. It is a book that changed my life in a way that today still the reverberations of this book continue to touch every single thing that I do. It is a book that you've heard me reference countless times here. So I'm just going to show it to you. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. You know that we love her here. This book sat with me for a very, very long time, and the layers of the download from this book were multiple. I don't even know. It's probably almost worth doing an entire video on that because there's just so much. But I reached a point at some point after all those years where the book felt complete, where I felt complete with the book, and the book went on my shelf for years. And I want to make clear that a lot of this for me, and I share this with you in different places in different ways, but there is no concrete, sometimes you just know, right? It's not like a sign falls from the sky and it's a rock with a sign and a writing that it's time to end. Sometimes I just don't feel a connection anymore. And that's not to say that it doesn't serve me. It's that we're complete. There's a sense of like, oh, okay, I can put it back now. When those things happen, trust it. Sometimes it feels so slight and so subtle, but the subtle can be very, very powerful. In any case, I journeyed with this book for a very long time. This book to me feels like my mother, like a mother in my life. It mothered very integral parts of who I am as a human and as a woman in this world in a million ways. So all of a sudden I read this ancestral medicine book and it's on my altar because I am going to be with this book for a while, and some kind of thing happens where they're connected, and I don't understand how they're connected, but I kind of do. And it was interesting because I haven't read this book again. I read it several times back then, like literally 2 decades ago. I don't know that I'm feeling called to read it again, but maybe I will. I don't know, but they need to be together. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't question. Okay, you're both on the altar and you're both going to be there, and I'm going to be with you every time I sit at my altar. And I'm going to be with you in intention and open up to whatever it is that the two of you have to say to me together. There's something alchemical there. I don't have the answer, but they're together on my altar. So there it is. The other book, there's 2 more that I'm going to cut. Well, 3 more. The next book is more of a spell. I know that I reviewed this at the beginning of this year sometime. It was one of the very first books that I reviewed for BookTube. It's an excellent book. I think it was either a 4.5 or a 5. I don't remember what I gave it. By Jason Miller. It's a great book, and maybe we'll link to the video review somewhere here so you can check out the video. It's by Jason Miller. And by the way, Jason Miller, we're going to be reading 2 other books of his for the November Witches book subscription. And he's also going to be joining us, which I am so honored and so excited. He's going to be joining us for the end of the month live Witches Book Coven gathering. So I'm just thrilled for that. Okay, but this book is fantastic. When I read it, I was very excited. I'm still very excited to read anything that he has written. I really, really enjoy his voice. I enjoy his knowledge base. He's incredibly knowledgeable. This book was one of those books where I read it, I was like ignited by it. Like, oh, this is a very exciting book. It has so much information. And every time I look at it, it's like it calls me, you gotta read me again, read me again. And there is something very specific for me personally that I really appreciate about his voice and his writing. There is a layer or a level of detail of information that he shares and strategy in a very detailed way that doesn't waste space. Some books are hyper detailed in a way that is like useless. That is not the case here. There's a layer of detail and a layer of strategy in the way he conveys his information that really speaks to me and that I really desire for what I create in the world. I want that is basically what this is about. And so this book for me is about a spell. Basically, I want to download that skill or that type of writing or conveyance in the world. That's what this book is about. It's very intentional. I want this, and it's on my altar. And I don't know how long it'll be there for, but that's kind of what I'm opening for. So that's a different example of how you can use books in this type of ritual on your altar and open up to what the book has to offer. This next book has been on my altar since I got it. This book has been with me since 2002. I just looked at my little And this book is deeply abused. It's been stained. It's been faded. It's got ink stains. Okay, let me go back. I hold 3 spiritual lineages. To me, everything is witchcraft, but they're not all witchcraft. I have been a student of Tantra and of Sri Vidya Tantra specifically. For many, 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 many years. I have been involved in a pretty intensive apprenticeship now for the last 4. It is a lineage that is very dear to me. I am actively practicing it daily, and I don't teach it. It probably will never be a formal part of the Witches Box. I have not sought to be empowered to teach it, so I don't have permission to teach it, basically. But it absolutely touches and influences every single thing that I do. It absolutely touches and influences my witchcraft. So even though you don't think I'm talking to you about it, I am. So this book was part of my very, very early studies on the Mahavidyas, which are the 10 wisdom goddesses in Hinduism or Hindu Tantrism. This book has come to hold very specific and different frequencies or anchors on my altar over the years, because literally since 2002, we're in 2019, so 17 years this has been on my altar, or I've carried it with me in different places. I've read this book 4 or 5 times. I have scribbled all over it. It's a heady book. Here it is, Tantric Yoga and the Wisdom Goddesses. In the beginning, this book was completely and utterly over my head. Like, I read it and parts of my brain felt electric, but I couldn't quite grasp the wisdom that was being shared. Like, I knew that it was deep and it was important, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't, but I got it. Like, there was some other part of me that was just electrified by it. So I kept it on my altar, and then I read it again and I read it again. And over the years, as my studies have continued, as my studies have deepened, as my practices have deepened, I get it, even though there's still so much about this book that still blows my mind. So in the very, very beginning, when this book was on my altar, it was about, I want to understand. I desperately desire to understand what this book is trying to tell me, what you're trying to tell me, and I'm open to that. Over the years, it's still sort of that, but also now it is like another desire has developed, because when I read this book, I can't explain to you, it was such a visceral, physical sensation where I'm sure that most of you, or maybe not all of you, but if you have ever lit, and those of you who have the box have gotten these, but those charcoal discs to light your incense, right? When you light it, that little like sizzle line kind of moves across the charcoal. That's what my brain felt like little synapses that had been asleep for millennia were just just igniting in this very visceral. I felt my brain do this, and I understood this is some deep shit. And this is some mind-blowing, expansive shit in a very holy way. And I want that. So the book holds several different intentions for me now, or different spaces for me now, where I want to understand this deep knowledge, but also may I always have and find these mind-igniting pieces of information in books. I want this forever. So it holds both of those for me now. I know that sounds so like overplotted with relationships with books, but this is what it is. I really believe that I'm engaging in real live relationships with entities, with thought forms. Yeah, this book, I should probably read it again, but okay, so there's those 4 books. And then the last book, along that line, that lineage that I study, there is a holy book that is not to be seen, it's not to be shared to just the common eye, and not to say that in a insulting way, but it's a sacred book that you keep the integrity of. It's not supposed to the floor. I think I said that already. It's wrapped in a specific piece of fabric in a specific color. I don't show that to people unless they're part of this lineage or understand what the book is. That book goes with me everywhere. So it sits on my altar right now with a couple of other sacred items. It's a book that I interact with and read from and do ritual out of frequently. But when I'm not here and I'm traveling with my husband, that book is with me all the time. Everywhere I go, it's with me. I hate to sound weirdly secretive, it's not that. It's that, and I talked about this in other contexts before, that there are certain sacred pieces that we are actively working with that we should just not show everyone. And it's not that you're not good enough for it, it's that the thing requires you to hold it in a very precious and sacred way, because that continues to build and support the energy that it holds. So that book is with me all the time. I don't share that, but it's there. It's part of the stack, and this stack will probably change over time, but that one is probably going to be with me and continue forever. Along those lines, listen, Book of Shadows, they're not always on my altar because I have like 5 at this point. I hold different books, hold different types of information, but there's one that I have on my altar as well that I'm working with, specifically with a couple of sigils, and those stay there. If this is something that you do as well, I'd love to hear about it. This is just one of the many, I think, ritual layers that I have with books and my relationship with books. It's been very enriching for me. It's very dear to me. It's effortless for me at this point because it's not something, it just has always come naturally to me. I know that sometimes when we endeavor to pick up a practice, sometimes it just takes work to choose to do the thing again and again. This has not been that. This is just a natural expression of me and how I relate to books and how I really, really feel them as their own individual entities that we interact with. In a lot of ways can serve as a portal for more. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear about it. If you do anything similar to this, I'd love to hear about it. If you have rituals around books, I'd love to hear about it. If you think I'm just like, psh, I'd love to hear about that too. But only in nice words. And that's it. That's it for today. I think that we're probably back on track for reviews starting this next video. We're still not done with the moving. It's what it is. At the time of this video going live, we are still in the October giveaway phase. So the video before this is for the October 2019 giveaway. As most of you know, hopefully you know, and if you don't know, heads up. We do a book giveaway every Sabbath. Like a week before the Sabbath, I announce that we're doing a giveaway. You do a couple of things, and then I announce the winners on the day of the Sabbath. And this one will be announced on the 30th because the 31st is a big day for a lot of us. And this time, because we've been picking one winner each time, this is our 3rd giveaway. This time we're going to pick 2 winners because I have 2 stacks of 5 items, which here's the thing. I arbitrarily chose 5 books for the first giveaway, and then I did it again for the second. And now, because of the generosity of some publishers that have sent us beautiful things, as well as books that I've been accumulating, we have 10. We have actually 9 books and 1 gorgeous oracle deck that I'm going to be giving. So 2 people, 5 items each, 2 winners on October 30th. I'll be announcing it. So when you finish this video, go to the one before this and check out what that's about and what you need to do to enter, because I will be picking a winner soon. And that's it. Love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for constantly just indulging my love of books and dialoguing with me about it. That's it. We'll see what comes up next week. I have no idea. I've got 3 books that I can review, and I don't know which one I'm going to review next. So we'll see what that is. I will see you later. Blessings.